Hi everyone, this is Lunatum Mag, and it's me, Tamara, and we are on our third Lunatum Live today with Alexa Sirbu. Hi Alexa.
Hello.
Very glad to be having you today, and would like to talk about Alexa's career path and on her life experience, and to discuss some details of being a designer, a CG artist today from the feminist perspective. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation today. And Alexa, I think it would be nice to start from the very beginning, from your background. Do you remember the moment you knew exactly you dedicate your life to art and to design? And do you have any support within the family? How was it going for you? So, what did you start with?
Well, I think for me, the moment where I realized that design and art is something I definitely want to pursue, like going forward, was probably around high school, which I must mention. The high school itself was not at all orientated towards design or creative. It was quite the opposite. It was like it had a stronger focus on sort of mathematics and economics. And I think through those years, I realized that is definitely not for me. I especially around that time, I started getting into photography and mostly digital photography. I bought my first DSLR. I remember, saving a lot of money to buy this camera because, back then there were no increase like really amazing iPhones. And I was taking a lot of pictures in my spare time, and thinking back, it was mostly like nature, and I was fascinated with like flowers and peculiar plants and insects and landscapes. So I was doing a lot of that on the side. And maybe what's like important to note to mention is that the images I was taking were not, didn't feel like it was enough for me. Just the image I would get out of the camera. So I would go home, load everything up in Photoshop and just start almost exaggerating certain features in those photographs, almost like blend, distort, and merge, and try to just play and see where that would lead me, and create something which felt real, because again, it was at its core a photograph, but then there's something peculiar about it, something different, which I think, thinking back is a similar mentality to what I'm doing today. But always bringing that like hyper real layer to the image. And when there was the time for me to pursue almost my education further and decide what I would study at university, I knew back then already that I definitely want to do something with sort of design and arts and computers, and sort of using those two together. And I think that's when that's when it really sparked this this desire to work with color and texture, and form, and create certain moods. And unfortunately, though, at that time, in Romania, where I'm from, there was not really much of a course which would blend those two, sort of the arts and the computers. You would either go down like computer science route, which was definitely not something I wanted to do, because the arts and design aspect was quite important, but also not go down like fully fine arts route, because the technology was truly like fascinating for me. I definitely wanted to do that as well. So I was a bit stuck. I wasn't really sure if I should pursue this on like a education and higher education, or if I should continue down this like self-taught route. But luckily at that time, I think there was a talk in my school about potential universities abroad, and in UK there were a few of them which fit the description that I was looking for, and the one that really caught my eye was it's a fairly new department in Coventry University in West Midlands, which was called creative computing. So I like straight away I knew this is pretty much what I'm after, because I knew I wanted to do a mix of the two, but not exactly which particular niche. And that course had a bit of everything. You would start with creative coding and like processing, graphic design and digital design, web design, and then further on animation and 3D. So that felt very much aligned with what I was after. And just to give me a bit of time and to explore several different realms, so I can make up my mind which is the one that I would like to go towards. But of course, that involved me traveling and like moving abroad. And of course, my family did not take that very easily, but was lucky to have their like full support. And yeah, there wasn't, I think they could see how much I'm into this, and there's no way back for me to like change my mind. And I think they definitely had a good understanding of the difficulty of pursuing something like this back home versus like moving abroad. So yeah, that's kind of what kind of led me into what I'm doing now, and around the period which made me decide this is what I want to be doing.
Thanks. It's really great to know that you had a very supportive and wise family to give you a chance to experience what you wanted to experience at the time, and to try to reach your dreams, and to dedicate your like, youth to searching for the answers you wanted to find. It's really great. And also you mentioned plants and flowers, all this natural things that inspired you. And I remembered my first Lunatum live with Natalie Liu, your friend, who I hope is watching us right now or will be watching us later. Because she also, I was very much amazed by the beauty of her works, where she also tries to research the nature and how it can be transformed through technology as well. And at the same time, she has this beauty and grace in her works, and it really, it's just mesmerizing. So it's glad to know that you two have like not the same but similar approaches to your studying your work. So glad to hear that. And also you mentioned already your education, and my next question was about education as well. I would like to know what's your opinion on current design education when we talk about 3D animation, motion design, CGI. Do you personally see yourself as a teacher, perhaps, or as a mentor, who would like to share experience, maybe give some advice and to guide students who are only starting their their working experience in this field. And what would you say about campus education?
Yeah, well, I think with CGI, motion design, it's quite tricky because it is a fairly new discipline and niche within the whole sort of design spectrum. And there's not that many courses which are fully dedicated to this. I think in the UK, I know of a motion design course at Ravensbourne, which is one of the few, or not the only one, that's available. And I'm currently in touch with the course leader there because he's looking to almost start a festival there, and trying to kind of take this realm further, and kind of, even when discussing like the modules and how you were to build a curriculum for an industry which moves at such speed, because usually with universities degrees and writing modules for them, by the time you develop, by the time you get it through the system to actually get it approved, it can take like several years, like a couple of years. So by the time you get to teach that course, the world is already a different place. So it's always been quite tricky to find something that's so like specific and spot on to this niche. But of course there are like design courses and kind of like VFX or animation degrees which help you set more of a like foundation for like the principles of design, principles of animation, motion, movement, which will never change. I think this is, again, something that it is worth learning and developing under a more kind of academic route. But then how you actually implement these in a more like in the actual industry, and you get to apply that knowledge physically, I think that's that can get quite tricky. And what you learn at uni or at any types of like course, it cannot be like enough. You have to constantly stay up to date and have this desire to learn on your own. And maybe with the technology that can change so fast, the courses are maybe a bit shorter, and they come from like companies, for example, like Escape Technologies. They do a bit more specialized sort of niche on a certain software or like a certain department, which with a shorter course, of course, that gives you ability to adapt much faster to how the industry is changing. Because I think it's so important for like the tutors in a university department to really stay up to date with what's happening in the real world and what's happening outside of the four walls of the class, and being able to like understand, okay, what are the latest tools, what techniques, what is actually what companies and studios are looking for in potential like students who are entering the fields. So yeah, having that connection to the real world, it's important, which in a university realm, it's probably not as common. And yeah, I think it's a tricky one. It's a mixable. It depends so much on the person and what kind of framework you enjoy like studying. Some people are very self-taught. They don't need a framework to develop themselves, because again, a lot of people that I know in this industry are purely self-taught. They haven't really studied this on an academic level, and they're just great. They went straight away from like high school into the industry through internships, and that's how they learned. They learned by doing, which is also.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I have a question here. Do you believe in online education in terms of design? Because now there are so many courses, so many possibilities for people from all around the world to start the career and to get the knowledge and to practice without having this academic base. That you start believing that it's possible. And do you personally, having all the experience you've had, having your university years behind you, do you believe it's possible to be a professional by studying online?
Definitely. I think from my experience at university, a lot of the things, maybe 70-80% of the things I actually learned was online for me, actually researching those things. So I think it's totally possible, especially because with CG, you don't rely so much. I mean, yeah, you do need a powerful machine, but you don't rely on so much equipment, and having almost these like labs that a university might be able to give you. So I think it's totally possible. But of course, it takes a lot more like discipline from you, and drive to work under this realm without physically going somewhere. But I think, yeah, it's totally possible, and there is definitely a shift in a lot of universities switching to online. Like this post-COVID era has, yeah, definitely sparked a lot more universities opening up to online teaching, and just like opening the doors to as many people as possible who are not, unfortunately, able maybe to move to like a big city that can be quite expensive. So I think that is definitely a big part which we will see more of, and it's totally it can lead to quite a good foundation and knowledge. And yeah, I think with CG or design, I have so many like friends who didn't completely come from this particular field. They might come from architecture or film and for photography, and there are so many interchangeable kind of principles that you can apply to CG. So it's, yeah, I think it's not a problem at all. Hello, I think did it freeze? It froze a little bit. But yeah, I think, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh. Has it frozen? You are frozen. Okay, let's hope we'll get Tamara back.
I'm so sorry, I had some troubles with the connection, but hopefully it's all fine right now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, it's all good. Back to normal.
So my question was about your will to become a mentor or teacher in the nearest future.
Mm, I don't know. I don't really like see myself as a tutor, because if I were to do it, it would probably be very unconventional, very like hands off. Not sure if it would qualify as teaching. Um, but there were some isolated episodes where I was asked to mentor a couple of students at Hyper Island, which, yeah, I think is definitely quite fun um, to see. And like I think for me, teaching is always tricky because I'm not like a fan of almost having like very literal sort of tools that I want to teach or techniques and say, okay, this is the way to do it, because with what we do is so personal to your way of seeing things, and what might work for me as a workflow might not work for you. So if I were to teach or mentor somebody, I think it's so much more down to being able to spark almost this desire to go and learn things independently.
You just be an inspirational figure for the young students.
Yeah, I think it's just, yeah, showing sort of like that energy, and hopefully that's contagious enough and like sparks something in you that makes you then go and delve into the topics and learn things your own way. And yeah, maybe by you telling the story and how you got to where you are and how you discover the things that work for you, maybe that will inspire somebody to like discover their own way. um, so I think that will probably be my way of doing it. Yeah,
So guys,
very hands off and very yeah, more of an inspiration and like triggering a certain sensation and desire than teaching things very literally.
guys, if you ever see Alexa having an open lecture or whatever, just come to listen to her sharing her experience and making you want to go and start designing, because that's what she really can do. So we'll be
Yeah.
looking into it. And talking about your personal methods right now, you say you explore visual narratives in motion. That's just your definition of your art. And what are these narratives? And how did you develop your storytelling skills? And how do you personally understand what narratives are appealing to you? If you can characterize them or give some examples and details, it would be nice to hear them.
Yeah, I think it goes back to when I first started picking up photography and being very naturally drawn to certain subjects. And for me, it was always like going in nature and almost like biology realm and kind of natural phenomena. I just find these things like so inspiring and mind-blowing, and I've always gravitated towards that as a concept I want to explore. But then also on the other end of the spectrum, the whole like technology and kind of chemistry and science, like future of fashion, future of craft. Again, I find those things very, very fascinating. So it's always been these two almost opposing realms. They seem opposing, but what's most exciting is when you get to blend both of them. For example, looking at my past projects and things that I'm most fond of, would probably be like a film we did for Velcro, which is a product that is the most famous case of biomimicry, which again looks at natural world to solve a design problem. And telling that story, I think for me was very, very satisfying, because you work with these two very fascinating subjects, and when they merge together, I find that like most exciting. And maybe another one was a film for Biotherm, which again it was regarding a product that looked at plankton and the natural world as inspiration for developing products, and how you would synthesize something that happens in nature in order to build a more like sustainable product, and then that actual product being packaged in a packaging that's purely made of recyclable, like infinitely recyclable plastic. And again, that nature and tech has been most sort of fascinating for me. And I think in terms of like storytelling and how I like to go about almost putting these things in a visual way, what I'm over the years, I think doing these films and stills and just starting to identify patterns there. I think what I've noticed is that I love to almost take two maybe unrelated subjects and find a way to bring them together, the same way the nature and tech, but also, for example, a project that we did last year for a skincare brand, which was all to do with sort of aging and anti-aging sort of formulas. And again, instead of going down the typical route of showing human skin as it is and doing the obvious, again, we try to pair this idea of like aging and human skin with a very unrelated subject, and in that case was space. So using this space as a metaphor for the human skin and playing with these concepts of like time travel, time reversal, sort of space-time fabric stretching. Again, it's a lot more exciting to tell that kind of story than doing the obvious route, or like working a lot with flowers. For example, flowers have this beauty to them. Everybody is like, can appreciate that. But the fact that they are usually associated with, I don't know, like love and romance and the natural world is one aspect. But then if you were to use flowers and almost pack a different type of symbol onto it. And again, there's another piece that we did for Apple where we used the flower as almost a metaphor for a powerful device, and creating a flower which takes characteristics from like a MacBook device and the power and materials, and pack that idea into a flower form. Or looking at flowers and create something a bit more alien and surreal. So it's always been this like correlation between two subjects, bringing them together to create something new and unexpected. And also, I think with flowers or this natural world, there's so many types of combinations that you can do, which it's almost like a never exhausting like realm of ideas that you could like pair together to arrive at something new, and playing with like contradiction, because with nature there is of course a certain beauty to it, but there is also like a brutality, and a lot of the times we like to create something that can feel delicate and very soft and gentle, but when it comes to the motion, really go like very explosive, and almost balance that with something a lot more like dynamic, and speak to that sort of brutality of the real world and sort of phenomena that happens in the real world.
You say it's exciting to work with these narratives, but for me, as for viewer, it's exciting to firstly to see such projects, and secondly, right now to listen to you talking about them, revealing the secrets, because I guess that's the point where design doesn't solely solve a product problem, but it also has some sort of philosophy behind it, and this is when it gets the meaning, and this is when you get the emotional feedback from people who see it. And I guess that's the most important thing in what you are doing. Well, as for me, from my perspective, it really matters. And I'm just very glad to know that there are people who think about it and for whom it matters as well. So thank you for your approach. It's just a pleasure to listen to you. And I guess that's the point when I should ask about your studio. So how did you come up with the idea that you wanted to start your own project, such a big one, because it takes a lot of time, a lot of investment in different fields, and what was perhaps the final impulse that influenced such a decision for you, and what difficulties did you face? And I guess that's the point when we should start discussing this feminine perspective that we wanted at the beginning, because I believe that you have many things to share with us concerning this one.
Yeah, I think with the studio, to be honest, it was never like something that we set out to do. It was a process that happened very much gradually and organically. I don't think I set out to like have like this plan. Oh, in 2 years time, I definitely want to launch a studio. And I think things happened very, very like on a snowball type of effect. I think when me and Lucas, the other co-founder of XK, when we originally started working together, I think 2016. Yeah, that's when we sort of first met, and we started collaborating together, and there was definitely a lot of overlap into what we liked. And this led us to work on our own sort of personal projects alongside. We at that time were working at a London studio, and we were pursuing our own sort of interests in the spare time, and this led us to launch to create this film called Flower, which was the first kind of full length 1 minute long type of film, which we released, and it was luckily very well received. And on the back of that, we just started receiving commissions as a duo, And I think we did a few more films after that. And we then were in a position which allowed us to almost quit our full-time roles and pursue this collaboration independently and go the solo. And we did that for about like 2 years. We worked on commissions, films, like commercial work, but also personal projects, which were again very, very important to us. And yeah, we were doing that as a duo, and at some point we realized, why don't we make this a bit more official and just bring all of the work that we've done together under one roof, and not have two separate websites and portfolios, and always having this like two roofs that the work would live in. And that's when we decided to launch XK and invite more people into our sort of world. And yeah, it was something very personal for us. So of course, it did feel quite scary because yeah, you are used to one sort of way of working, and this is something very like personal to you. But then I think there is a beauty in inviting others and kind of turn this into something personal for them. And I think that was the initial intent, to expand our world and bring a lot more people to work with. So yeah, it was very much a natural progression.
And how did your personal experience, as you see it, help you, or maybe it didn't help, in managing the processes within the studio? And now, when you have your colleagues with you, and you have to be responsible for many things, for organizational stuff as well. Well, you said that you would not be a great teacher because you don't like being that strict and serious. But concerning work in the studio, you have to arrange many processes and you have to manage them. What are your relationships with your colleagues, with the people who are now working with you? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think, well, as the studio started on this sort of like, we wanted to create a mix between like having artistic commissions but also commercial work. So the way we set up the studio has been very much reflecting on how we love to work. And I think, me personally, the way like my creative process relies so much on this balance between like my own intuition, but also like intent. So trusting sort of my gut and experimenting and playing around until I find that's something special, versus having a very clear idea at the start, like mood boards and intent. And yeah, I think it's been quite tricky for this. Like, my personal intuition is very hard to teach or like try to replicate in some way. So I think the way we work in the studio, and I'm very aware that this is not very common, is that a lot of our, and it's also influenced by the type of projects we get in, which they don't tend to be the same every time. So with a lot of new projects we get, always there's some sort of challenge, and that challenge can be either creative, like working with abstracting something that hasn't really been abstracted before in a certain sense, or a technical challenge. So the way we go about almost tackling most of the project is that we might not have like a very clear idea, at the start, like fully realized vision of what we want to make. And, you know, we don't sit down and draw a storyboard and almost go, okay, then we have the storyboard, let's go and realize this. I think the process of going this way would be quite uninteresting, and it would be quite hard for us to stay motivated to do that constantly and work in this type of workflow. I don't think it would be fun for like anybody involved, and instead we have some kind of like not fully formed idea of how the final piece will be in the end, but we have like a series of characteristics and like special little traits that you want that piece to have, and you start with those loose parameters, and then I think the work itself like realizes in the process of making it, and most of the time the result is more than that initial series of seeds that we wanted to do at the start. And I think this is what makes the process exciting for us. But of course, working this way is, yeah, not very common, and there are downsides to it. You definitely cannot fast track it, you can't shortcut it. You have to spend a lot of time in this like research and like experimentation phase, and you do end up with a lot of things which don't get used in the end, and our R&D folders tend to be bigger and vaster than the production folder. And yeah, but I think that we wouldn't want to do it any other way. And yeah, a lot of our best work came out when this process like works to the T, and we would definitely feel like we would lose some sort of magic if we try to work in a more rigid pipeline type of process, because there is a certain magic when you work this way, when there is like a level of surprise and a happy accidents and things which things you might do out of fun, which then start forming like a stronger concept, and then you can take that and develop it further. So yeah, I think this is the type of creative process that we love to adopt. But again, this is not something that works for everybody. So when it comes to the people that we bring on board, it's very important for them to resonate with this type of workflow, and not want to like be like managed like very closely, because I personally do not enjoy managing at all. I would much rather spend an entire day just being like absorbed into designing something, like exploring a certain idea, than micromanaging somebody and just constantly checking. So I think, yeah, that's sort of my way of doing things. But of course, when you do work with others, when you are part of a bigger studio, there is a certain level of organization and planning and things that need to happen at a certain time. So there is a level of like logistics and planning. But I think I try to be as transparent as possible and make sure that everybody's aware of timelines, and okay, when feedbacks come in, when do we have to share things by, and just almost put these things out there, make everybody aware. But also, yeah, just let them loose, go and explore, and have check-ins and feedbacks whenever it's truly necessary. And not so much, every single day we need to catch up first thing in the morning, set a plan. We do that when it's required, but a lot of the time we like to spend most of the time tackling things and creating things, then spending times in meetings and that sort of stuff.
Thank you. Actually, I have something to say, but before, I'd like just to remind everyone that you can ask your questions on YouTube stream below in the comment section, and Alexa will answer them later. We'll post her answers on Instagram, Lunatum Mac. So just if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll come back with the answers. And concerning your answer right now, it made me think that sometimes planning and all this strict organization kills the magic of production, of creation, perhaps. It's a better word in this case. And to me, as to a person who has been into community work for the past 4 years, it seems that what you describe in terms of your studio is not really the studio type of work. It's more about a community of people who share the same vision on what they do and who enjoy creation and who enjoy the chance to share their views and opinions and to collaborate. And this is perhaps the greatest thing you can offer each other. And this is what I respect personally very much, and I hope not only me but many people who are watching us today respect it too. And this leads me to my question about design community in general. And here I think I have 2 questions. The first one is more to do with some activities, perhaps some ways of interaction. For example, some online events or offline events, meetups, collaborations, labs, etc. So what do you think design community in general, not only in 3D in motion or perhaps just in 3D in motion, needs to strive? It's the first side of the question. And the next one is has more to do with the ethical aspects, I suppose. What are your relationships with yourself in terms of this feministic perspective we've discussed, and the process of defining what you want to transmit through your work as a woman, and how do you see the role of young women who are doing design, 3D, CGI, motion, whatever, graphic design as well. What is their role in changing the narrative right now? And maybe what will this role be like in the future, in the next years?
So I guess going back to the design community, and what you might consider best as an interaction, like offline versus online. I think both of them, they have their own advantages, because of course doing things online and just like using internet to organize meetups, events, collaborations, things can happen a lot faster, and you can reach a lot more people from across like wider disciplines, which of course is so important nowadays when everything just becomes so saturated in ideas. Like people are running out of like new ideas and things. So being able to collaborate across different disciplines and bring people from different parts of the world, different sort of looks on a certain problem, I think it's key. And that can be done so much easier online, but also you cannot deny the beauty and energy and just like pure fun that you can get from like an in-person type of meeting and interaction. And I think even in us, in our case in the studio, we do have people from very different spectrums. Some come from architecture, some come from film or like VFX. And the more different views and the more different expertises and angles you can bring on a problem, I think the better your solution is, and the more like well-rounded once you tackled it from all sorts of perspectives. So I think, yeah, that is something which would hopefully keep developing. But then, yeah, with in-person meetings and the the energy you get out of that, I think is unbeatable, and you have to do a mix of both. For example, when we had like last year, we had the chance to open our doors as part of like a London design festival, and we were able to invite people from across different sort of design industries. It was such a, I think it was like such an eye-opening moment, and taking yourself out of the small screen and out of just Instagram and digital space in real world and have that real world interaction, it does wonders to your motivation and like energy to want to pursue this further once you interact in real life. So yeah, I think we should totally, I don't think one is better than the other. You need to do a bit of both. And yeah, I think when it comes to the second part of the question, and how I sort of like see myself in this industry, or what my experience has been, I think that, yeah, a lot of the things that I decided to pursue are not like, they come quite naturally to me. I love to create things which speak to me and they resonate with me on a certain level, and I want to take that further and like dive into it, explore it further, and hopefully transmit that feeling later on and transmit it forward. It has been like a very kind of like natural type of process, and ultimately what I decide pursuing is what just like fascinates me and I find interesting. But of course, very early on I realized that the industry can feel, as a girl, especially when I entered the industry and I had my first internship, I was not only the youngest, the only girl, and also not from UK. So at the start, I definitely felt quite out of place. I'm like, what am I doing here? It was this like mix of imposter syndrome and not feeling that I can almost relate to anybody as well as I used to back in school. But I don't think that was something that like deterred me. Of course, it did make me quite kind of like question and wanted me to hopefully have like more mentors and people that I could go to for advice and almost share similar experiences. But I think at that time I tried to focus more on the work itself and not pay so much attention to that aspect, and instead see the things that I found worth pursuing, or like my own sensibility and vision, almost as like a positive, because you were able to bring something new in an environment where sometimes you would get very similar like voices and ideas that are being bounced around, but the things that were like really speaking to me, and the fact that they were maybe more different than what was already out there, was almost seen as something like positive. And I think that also made me probably stand out from the sea of like the current sort of type of work at that time. So yeah, it's been tricky, but at the same time, I try not to pay like so much attention to it, and instead seeing it as a positive and a way to stand out. And yeah, once you do it, and of course you start to see some sort of like the fact that it's working, it gives you more and more confidence that you should continue down this route, and trusting your gut and just staying true to yourself has always been the way that led to like the most enjoyable and successful type of outcome. So I hope that makes hope that makes some sort of sense, and I didn't go sidetrack.
No, it certainly does. And I guess you, Natalie, and other um, young ladies in design industry, you're the examples of confidence and at the same time talent and wisdom. And it's a pleasure to listen to you and to see your works and to discuss some things, because you really inspire and you show that the positive thinking and self-confidence and hope um, for having a chance to find your place in the industry and in the world really does help to get it. And we have some questions. I'll just make you know what you're going to answer later. One is about Houdini approach in learning how to become an art director and in design perspective. Also, Alexa, you're such an inspiration for many girls. Could you please tell about the start of your career and your first internship? So we'll just send the questions later. And about the start of Alexa's career, there was a short intro in the beginning for those who have just tuned in or tuned in later, so you can rewatch it later. And also, hi Alexa, love your work at XK Studio. What would you say about the aspects you look in the portfolio for someone who's trying to enter 3D motion design industry? And also a comment from Sarah, as a studio co-founder and leader, what do you think of remote workflows, and do you work with someone who is outside of the UK? So we'll send all the questions to Alexa and she'll answer them, and the answers will appear on our Instagram feed a bit later. And also a shout out to Sarah, because she was one of those who very much wanted to see Alexa live on Lunatum. So thank you, Sarah, for the message you sent us after the first stream. And my final question, we have just a couple of minutes left. My final question is, you can answer shortly, it's up to you. What's the mission of design and why are you doing it right now? That's something I try to ask every time we have these lives, because I guess that matters.
That's a very interesting question to end on, and like very tricky one. I don't know, inability to do anything else at this point. No, joking. I think that I think for me, it's always been this like desire for finding that next sort of the next thing that excites me, and that next project where I'll be finally fully like happy because it's very rare that I complete the piece and I feel like, okay, this is exactly how I wanted it to be. I'm 100% happy. So I think like chasing that feeling that just the next one is going to be the best, that will make me finally content. And yeah, I think it's just a lot of fun. I think with our process and the way we work and how we get to surprise ourselves every day, and using the technology in this manner and blending it to tell a certain story. I think there's a magic to that, and I personally just have a lot of fun working this way, and almost setting some like parameters and ideas, and but also letting that like happen and seeing some sort of the result, especially with like procedural nature of how we work and like simulations and abusing software. I think it ultimately surprises ourselves with what we end up with. So it's always been this desire of just surprising yourself with what you might be doing next. That's keeping us going, hopefully, for a long time.
Thank you very much, guys. It was Alexa Sirbu and her endless and never-ending research in the field of design, motion, 3D. Thank you, Alexa, for being our guest today. Once again, we will answer, well, Alexa will answer definitely all the questions, and we'll post them. So keep up with all the news, and hopefully we'll see you later on some new episodes of our streams and lives. Thank you, Alexa. Have a nice day, and it was just a great pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you as well. Thanks so much again for the invite. It was super fun.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Have a good day, guys. Bye.
See ya.